The sound is good, Sheikh. Would you check, please? Khairan. Jazakallah khairan. All right. Bismillah. If there are any questions, and we'll try to take some now, bidnillahi ta'ala, if possible. Any questions from the brothers here or the sisters here?
I have a question, Sheikh.
Fadl.
It may be kind of, well, I had a discussion with a brother last week. First of all, what is the difference between fard and wajib? Is there a difference, or are they the same exactly, or is there a subtle difference between the two terms?
Jazakallah khairan.
That's the first part.
Right, Fadl. The second part, go ahead.
Second part of it is that we were talking about the salat and jama'ah, all right? And he made the comment that the salat and jama'ah is wajib. And if you don't have a good excuse for doing it, there's a punishment for it.
Okay.
And I said, well, what's the punishment and where does it come from? Because I couldn't understand that if a person is doing the fard, which is praying, making the salah, he's not abandoning the salah. But if he doesn't get to the masjid, he's being punished for it too. So
Khairan.
I said that I would seek some clarification on that.
Khairan. Jazakallah khairan. Barakallah fikum. Inshallah, before we get to the question, we'll take a brief excerpt from the Way of the Disciple. And it's on page number 21. Page number 21, the author, Allah hide his faults, said, a disciple's greatest weapon, his most prized possession, a disciple's closest and most trusted friend and confidant are his books. They are the greatest thing you can accumulate and amass. One must spend all his wealth on building and maintaining the library, mother books, staple titles, rare collections, and works out of print on mahogany shelves, teak drawers, jacaranda tables, etc. Creating and building your library will take both instruction and time. All things are difficult at first. There are four main schools of establishing a personal reading chamber. Number one, purchasing only the books that you have the time, ability, and desire to read. Only those that are helpful and interesting now. In layman terms, like, need a book, buy a book, and there you go. Number two, buying the mainstay work in each genre. Once you have at least one staple work for each section, you move on to the next level, so on and so forth. Number three, purchasing the easiest and simplest books in each genre, and then gradually moving up to the classical mainstays. Number four, focusing on one genre at a time until one has brought most, if not all, major and minor works of the genre, then moving on to the next section. You must read for hours every day. You and your books must become one. You must read because you must, because you want to, because one book opens the door to 1,000 other books. When without something in your hand to read, you don't experience pain like a fish out of water, you need to find another profession. Study this. The greater diversity you have in your reading, the sharper your mind will become, the more thorough your comprehension. The easier it will be to deduce and extract the secret benefits from your chosen field of study. This ability does not come easily. Study hard. Never fall asleep at night before reading. As soon as you have finished your adhkar, turn on your book light, fall asleep with your book and book light on your face. Keep your book beneath your pillow. Upon waking up and reciting the appropriate supplications, recommence your reading. Indeed, this is a part of thanking Allah for returning to your soul. Bookmarks, highlighters, and sticky notes are useful. And in a separate notebook, write down the fawaid which interests you the most. Underline that which you have a problem understanding. Jot down ideas, explanatory notes, but never write the English definition of unknown vocabulary words. One must force himself to memorize those. Bravery is a must. Learn how to summarize a book, condense it, record the typos and printing errors, place in the margins and borders for your own benefit. Upon buying a new book, the tradition is to the end of that discussion. As you've just heard briefly, is that it is a manual on how to systematically seek knowledge. Reading, you got to read. That's great. That's needed. But then a time must come in which, if I want you to listen to me, I show you how to listen to me. I give you a feasible way of implementing my advice and my commands. So the student of knowledge and his relationship with books is supposed to be sacred. And there are do's and there are don'ts with books, and there's a way of reading a book, studying a book, memorizing a book, referencing a book, let alone building a library. And not just the generalities of buy whatever, read whatever, study whatever, memorize whatever. So that's a brief excerpt from this book, which is a manual for the English-speaking person to become an Arabic-speaking person, an Arabic understanding person, an Arabic memorizing person, etc. How to be a serious student of knowledge in a systematic, professional way. That's what the book is about, and that's what that chapter is about. And it allows no doubt that chapter is extremely useful. And much of that information you would not find in one place in a simple, concise, yet thorough manner as such. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Khairan inshallah. With regards to, is there a difference between fard and wajib? Then in brief, keep things simple. Most of the people of knowledge, they hold the view is that they are synonymous. Rather, there are other terms and other words that are used for the same meaning. Fard, wajib, lazim, mahtum, maktub, farida, faridatullah, etc., haqq, etc. And there are some scholars from the Hanafi ulama and others who say is that there is a difference between the two. And that fard is that which is established through irrefutable proof and evidence. Is that which is totally established, yaqinan. There's so many ayat, so many ahadith clearly stating that this thing is mandatory. And that wajib is something which is established by a proof and evidence which isn't as such. Whether it's sound or not, it's sound, but it isn't of that level of strength, and which is irrefutable, right? Etc. So that's a brief explanation of those two terms. And obviously, fard and wajib is sometimes used for speaking on usul al-fiqh, and sometimes actual fiqh, and sometimes within a specific or particular madhab. An imam says something fard, and another place he says wajib. Or sometimes an imam is asked, does a person have to do this? And he says yes. And then the student asks him, afardun huwa? And he may say, I won't say fard. وهكذا. Wallahu ta'ala alam. As far as prayer in congregation, is it mandatory or not? And those who do not pray in jama'ah, are they punished? Is there specific punishment for them, etc.? The scholars of Islam, no doubt about it, they differ on that. It's khilaf among the people of knowledge. And the correct view, wallahu ta'ala alam, the strongest view, is that Muslim men have to pray in congregation with the proper conditions. Those conditions that they're healthy. The conditions is that it's general safety outside. It's nothing which is immediately threatening them, danger. The weather is agreeable, right? And that you live in the vicinity of the masjid in which you would normally hear the adhan without the microphone. Without the microphone. The natural human voice, undisturbed by the clutter and the clamor of the city. Indeed, I have, to make the point clear. How my voice is amplified. Allah, carried for blocks on a speaker. Versus a man, whether he's on the building, whether he's on a sidewalk, whether there's an actual minaret. Allah, how far the natural human voice would travel without the interference of cars and planes, so on and so on and so forth. So in a city, how far does a natural voice travel? 2 blocks, 3 blocks, maybe 4 blocks, maybe depending, right? And obviously a person knows when the adhan is with the app or with the speaker, etc. But it doesn't mean that he must walk 5 blocks or drive for 5 minutes, even 10 minutes to go to the masjid. That is mandatory. But if he can hear the adhan naturally, then it becomes what? Mandatory according to that view, which is the strongest view, in my humble opinion. And the proofs and evidences stating that the jama'ah is mandatory, no doubt about that, are far superior to those other proofs and evidences. But for the amana, the trust, respect of scholarship, there's not consensus among the ulama of Islam. And some of the scholars of Islam may say that the jama'ah is fard kifaya. It's something that somebody must do. The Muslims must do it in general, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every single Muslim has to do it. What's important is that it's mandatory upon every single male. If a Muslim does not pray in the Jama'ah, it doesn't necessarily mean that his prayer is invalid. Okay, according to most of those ulama who hold the view that it is fard, they say that the prayer will be valid as well. But if it's mandatory, fard or wajib, and he doesn't do it, then yes, he deserves punishment. Now, is there a specific punishment mentioned in the Kitab and Sunnah for men who do not pray in congregation? I don't know about that, except for the general proofs and evidences pertaining to Ahlul Nifaq, the people of hypocrites, or the people of hypocrisy, and that they were the ones who were notorious for staying away from the Jama'ah, avoiding the Jama'ah, and abandoning the Jama'ah, and praying in a lazy, lackadaisical, lethargic manner, right? And how the Prophet ﷺ wanted to burn their houses upon them because they avoided the Jama'ah, especially Fajr and Al-Isha. Last but not least, even if the Jama'ah is not obligatory or the distance or whatever the case may be, the Muslim should try his best to attend the Jama'ah. And there's nothing but good that he's going to get from attending the Jama'ah. It's nothing but good. It's nothing but a means of good, right? And there are many different books and lectures with regards to the importance of the Jama'ah. Wallahu ta'ala alam. That's in brief. Khair, inshallah. Anything else before we move forward? Tayyib. Fadal.
Is the definition of orphan, is it different in Islam than it is in a dictionary?
Understood.
Do your parents have to, parent or parents have to be deceased, or can they just abandon you? Like, what's the actual definition?
Understood. It's a yes and a no answer. It's a yes and a no. In general, yatim in Islam, in Arabic and Islam, and there's a connection between the two. The Arabic language in Islam is the one who is under the age of puberty and his father has died. That's a yatim. So that's an example, or how there's a fork in the road. My mother's still alive. She still provides for me, takes care of me. But my father is dead, then in Islam, that person is an orphan. He's a yatim. Versus in other societies or other languages in which both parents have died, then a person is an orphan. But even if your caring, loving mother is still there for you and the father isn't, that person is a yatim. And before we move forward, this goes to show you the importance of the role of the father. وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Very unfortunate thing that has happened to many of us, many of our households, one may say most, in which the father isn't there for one reason or another. Dead, in jail, deadbeat. The mother is keeping the children from the father, whatever the reason is. But the children don't have that man, not a woman, not both, but the man's presence, the man's smell, the man's boots by the door, the man's heavy hand, the man's care and protection and money, etc. Everything that a man brings, that the father brings, they don't have that. It's a problem with the tarbiyah. It's a problem with the raising. So that's one household. That's the after effects or the aftermath of one war. What do you think about if that happens for hundreds of years? What's going to happen to those people? And which is a broken, missing, chipped up household, generation after generation after generation after generation after generation after generation after generation. That's going to have a major impact upon that race and their future and their communities, etc. And that's a major, major problem. We all know what I'm talking about. That which was done intentionally, systematically. And I'm going to speak the truth. Okay, many young people, they're locked up for 20 years, 100 years, 50 years, their life, etc. And that just messes things up even more, makes it even more difficult for them to get a job, to take care of themselves, etc. And we're not blaming anything on anybody. You're responsible for what you do. We're not on none of that nonsense. You are responsible for your deeds. You have a brain. You have common sense to know right from wrong. However, the system in which you were brought up and raised was basically made for you to fail. It was made for you to fall into this, to be around these people, and to end up in a jail and end up a career criminal. And one of the reasons why that system was made for you was your father not being there. Why wasn't your father there? Because his father wasn't there. Because his father wasn't there. Because his father wasn't there. And then the people, with regards to racism and colorism and the things they blame, all these people are like this. You guys are all like that. You're just a statistic like that. This is the only thing that you guys are good for, so on and so on and so forth. Well, who was the person to break up the family? Someone honestly asked the question, where did the systematic way of breaking up a black family come from? Who started that sunnah, that tradition? Murder, selling, this, that. How did these families become so displaced in the first place? Who encouraged and forced the concept of illegitimate sex? Where did that come from? Did it come from Africa? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Did it come from West Africa? Did people go around making zina? Or did a man have households and tents under his control and protection? So the concept of the system, how the system was made, how it was evolved, how it was developed. In other words, you're entering the poker game with a stack of cards that are stacked against you. And it's made for you to fail. So that means you got to be smarter and work harder and have your eyes even more open, more aware of the people around you that are setting up your failure. And last but not least, if and when you get married and you have children, you need to do the right thing. And stop blaming this one and that. When you got kids now, what do you want to do? You want to be another statistic, another number, another divorce, another split family? And women as well. They're not free from it. They're not free from the blame. Are you helping keeping your family together? Are you helping the man of the house be the man of the house? Or are you doing the opposite because of your ego and your attitude problem and your nastiness and your bitterness? So these social problems, they plague everybody. But right now I'm only talking about my people, our people, and how they have plagued us for years now, centuries. Someone steals something, he's locked up for 20, 30 years. Let alone he never did anything. He was framed. He was a victim of brutality, whatever the case may be. And the father's gone. A small drug charge, they throw you away. Right? So it's upon us to reflect. It's upon us to get our lives, our communities, our households together and not blame anyone else, not look for anyone else's help as well. I'll say that. We can't keep looking for the next person to help us out and to be our savior. We got to get it together, and we have to be there for our children, and we have to try our best to be the best fathers that we possibly can be, right? And, of course, it's a long discussion. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to go away overnight. But I'm just trying to show you the importance of the father in a child's life. So much so important, is that the Arabs considered the child who's only missing his father to be a what? To be an orphan, even though the mother's there. All right? That's first and foremost. Secondly is, if a person's parents have abandoned him, both of them, for whatever reason, then even though they're not dead, as if that child is an orphan. And obviously they need and they should deserve some of the things that orphans need and deserve and should expect from the Islamic system of government, the Islamic social system. Someone is to look after this child. Someone is to adopt this child, quote unquote. This person is to go into your household. You take care of them. We'll pay you to take care of them. So on and so on and so forth, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Hopefully that's clear. Wallahu a'lam. Khair, inshallah. Any other questions before we take some online? If there are some online. May Allah help us all. I mean, in a very unfortunate situation. Allah musta'an. Tayyip. From YouTube, AA from the Bronx. Can we eat the meat from McDonald's in non-Muslim countries like America? In brief, I would say no. I would say stay away from that and avoid that. It's a long discussion with regards to meats of non-Muslims in Islamic or non-Islamic, Muslim or non-Muslim countries. What's important is we believe in the Quran and Sunnah, and if a Jewish man or Christian man or Christian woman or Jewish woman slaughter an animal in the right way, the meat is halal. But if a Muslim slaughters an animal in an incorrect manner, the meat is haram. If a Muslim slaughters an animal in an incorrect manner, the meat is haram. So the issue is, with me right now, what I'm saying, it's not so much of are they Jews or Christians, which is an issue too. That's not the main thing. That's not the catalyst. Is this person a Yahudi, the Yahud of the Prophet, a Christian of the Catholic? That's not the issue. The main issue. The main issue is the manner of the cutting of the animal, if the animal is even being cut. And of course, there are other problems with that with regards to people asking questions and investigating things. The rulings on that. Certain questions you're not supposed to ask. And certain things you are not supposed to investigate, according to Quran and Sunnah. And another issue pertaining to the whole haram, halal meat thing is I don't pray, I don't wear hijab, I shave my beard, I'm, doing whatever with 100 chicks at the same time. Every night is different, you know what I'm saying? But I make sure I eat halal. Something's off. Some restaurants, they sell khamr. They have a winery in the restaurant, literally a winery on the wall, vintage Italian wines. But the meat is what? La shak. The meat is halal, brother. Person doesn't pray, but I can't have McDonald's. That's haram. Something's what? Severely. And many Muslims, they suffer from this. And there's extremes. So you have a Muslim, okay, let's say he's from Philly, right? Kiev, right? This is haram, this is bid'ah, this is kada, this is that. But Purdue, Tyson, KFC, that's fine. There's no ruling on that, no fiqh on that, no ilm on that, no bid'ah over that. That's the extreme. And then you find another brother, like I said, doesn't pray, doesn't wear hijab, they sell khamr, they sell this, they sell all types of haram stuff. And they'll beat you with a stick if you even think about ordering French fries from McDonald's. You pull up to the drive-thru, can I get a fillet of fish? And they say, no, brother, this is haram grease, this is pork grease. No, you can't eat, it's haram. With the McDonald's visor on and the name tag. So you get the point I'm trying to make? Extremes. If you're going to eat from McDonald's or KFC, make sure you have a reason why you're eating. If you don't eat from McDonald's and KFC, make sure that you have the proper reason. And make sure that you have that same attitude with the rest of your deen. And of course, all of us, starting with myself, we all pick and choose, right? Keeping it real. And we all prioritize different things. Certain things are more important to you than me, vice versa. This brother is implementing the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ of having the lower garment above his ankles. The sunnah of the Prophet. Not this sheikh, not fulan, the Nabi ﷺ. There's no doubt about that. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ of having the garment higher to his shins, to his shanks. There's no doubt about that. And then another brother, he says, well, you talking about your pants being above your ankles, but you don't do this, you don't pray 20 rak'ah a night. Yeah, they're different sunnahs of the Prophet. Some are mandatory, some aren't. Everyone is going to prioritize something. Everyone is going to be neglectful in what? Something. But you go to the extreme, and you go gung-ho, and you don't do and implement the basics of the religion, something's what? Something's off. And you'll find that imbalance out of most people when it comes to the meat situation. You find that imbalance. And Allah surely knows best. Next question says, no name, no initials. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Furqan Nuruddin from Washington, D.C. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Kayfa halak? What is meant by the far name? Last name is different though. It says Nur. What's the ruling on changing your lineage? On attributing yourself to other than those who manumitted you. We shall not accept that name. Next question. AA from Toronto, Ontario. Salam Sheikh, what are the legitimate deal breakers when looking for a wife versus things that can be overlooked? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, because that depends on you, right? Everybody's different. What may be a deal breaker for me may not be a deal breaker for you. Some brothers, they may say, if she got bad looking feet, that's a deal breaker for me. I can't do it. Even if she's beautiful from the toes on up. And another brother, he says, I can work on the toes. We can, get a, we can work it out, right? So that depends on a person. What's important is that you make sure that you have the basic fundamental boxes checked. At least, that's a standard. Do you pray 5 times a day? I just need a yes or no answer. Not sometimes when I'm down. I need to know. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. Yes or no? If she's, no, I can't. Not do you cover your face? Do you wear gloves? Do you pray at night? Do you pray 5 times a day? Serious question. So if you pray 5 times a day, there should be no compromise on that. And I'm not talking about oversleeping for a salat. You sleep, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the mindset of it's time for dhuhr versus the whole day went by and I made tahajjud at night. You get the point I'm trying to make? A woman, a sister who doesn't wear hijab at all, that's a problem if that's your standard. I can work on it versus she didn't. We can't even sit down and have a cup of coffee if you're not implementing the things that are basic and fundamental to work, to me. And that's going to differ from person to person. And of course, there are things which are generally what? Shared. And the wife that you pick and choose, no doubt, is going to be a reflection of you. May Allah help us all. Next question. SN from Melbourne, Australia. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti. Was Timur Lang a Muslim? I heard some say that he was from the Nusayriya. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I don't know what to do with this question, whether we should answer it or not. We have a general rule that we don't answer questions about personalities, whoever that personality is, good or bad. Timur Lang, a very famous personality in the history of Islam and the Muslims and the non-Muslims as well. Was he a Muslim or was he not a Muslim? Only Allah truly knows. I can't say that he was a Muslim or even attributed to Islam, but it lies no doubt Timur Lang definitely had an intimate contact with the Muslims for an extended period of time. Wallahu ta'ala alam. That's what I'll say with regards to that. And Allah knows best. AM from Columbus, Ohio. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. What is the ruling for women regarding piercings? Is it the areas in the body that are impermissible? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The general ruling is that the piercing is going to be lawful until proven to be unlawful. And the proof of the piercing being unlawful is either going to be general or specific, explicit or implied. If we have a hadith stating that this cannot be pierced, can't pierce it. Or this is the general imitation of mushrikun. It's the general imitation of kuffar and fusaq. And if it doesn't fall under that, then no difference between an earring and any other type of piercing. Of course, there are other dimensions of that ruling, such as exposing your aura, someone touching your aura, the nature of showing off a piercing, why you're getting a piercing for your husband or for this one to see on social media, right? And the general concept of mutilating one's body. And there's a prohibition of mutilation. And the argument is made, if a woman gets this part of her body pierced, is that considered to be muthla, mutilation or not, or is it just style and fashion? I think that we can, it's going to vary from person to person, but in general, people can agree a person getting their navel pierced isn't the same as getting this other part or this body pierced. There's a difference in the nature of the pain, the sensitivity, et cetera, right? You get the point I'm trying to make? And if we just go into it absolutely haram or absolutely halal, it's going to be a problem. And that's because it is lawful for a person, or especially a woman, to adorn herself. And the adornment is going to be according to one's culture, unless it is a specific prohibition or unless it falls under a general implied prohibition, such as not imitating polytheists. And of course, I will say is that there is a connection between tattoos and piercings and shirk. That's a fact. There's a strong connection between those two cultures. And you look at early tattoo artists, those who got tattoos, those who did different types of piercings, there lies no doubt 99% of the time they were mushriks. And they did it for an act of shirk and polytheism. That's all I'll say. Allah surely knows best. Question is coming from R.A. from Boston, Massachusetts.